What do all Zoro fights have in common? Some badassery, right? You have some badass lines like wounds on the back are a swordsman's shame, and his and Luffy's trademark Ore wa makene, I will not lose, and of course Nani mo wakatta. You also have some badass moments for him, like him not backing down and running from the enemy, like versus Mihawk of course, and also versus Perona at Thriller Bark, when everyone runs away but Zoro doesn't. We also almost always get badass scenes like Zoro deflecting huge blows to save the day, like versus Kaku to save the Sunny recently at Egghead, and most famously, deflecting Kaido and Big Mom's combined attack on Onigashima. However, that's not all there is to Zoro. He is not simply a typical shonen badass character who comes in and slashes everyone and creates hype. As much as I love one-dimensional characters like that, like say Kenpachi Zaraki from Bleach, as much as those characters are hype, Zoro is much more. Zoro is more complex. Like Vegeta from Dragon Ball, Mikey from Tokyo Revengers, like them, he has a layered personality and is not just a flat character. And of course, he is much more nuanced than both Mikey and Vegeta, I'll argue. There's a reason why he is one of the very top favorite characters in all of anime. Mr. Morge has a great analysis video on why Zoro is not just the world's greatest swordsman, but in fact the best shonen character. While that may be a stretch, Zoro is definitely a very nuanced character. And while Mr. Morge focused on Zoro's loyalty in that video, this video right here explores Zoro's various strategic ways of fighting. Wait, what? Zoro and strategies in the same sentence? The same Zoro who fights head-on and does not respect enemies who use unfair means of fighting like King? The same Zoro who stood against Kuma and took all of Luffy's pain? The reckless Zoro who never hesitates to suffer to save his crewmates? Like bowing down to Mihawk for Luffy's sake? Like being injected with the mink drug to double the pain he took against two emperors? Like fighting battles he knows he will lose but still fighting anyway? Did I just say that Zoro is logical and strategic in fights? Yes, I did. Zoro is an inherently logical person. He is more logical than emotional. Whereas Sanji represents emotions and pathos, Zoro represents logic or logos. He is even unflinchingly logical. The most famous example is that when Usopp disrespects Luffy at Water 7, Zoro is adamant that Usopp leave the crew. He also does not let Luffy welcome Usopp back before Usopp apologizes. Yes, even in such emotional moments, Zoro is strictly stern. Besides this famous instance, in lots of other cases, Zoro shows his stubbornly logical side. Do you remember that Zoro is the Straw Hat who is most resistant to new Straw Hats joining? For example, he suspects Nami for the longest time, all the way until the end of Arlong Park. He is also the last person to accept Robin into the crew. Zoro is also suspicious of other characters' hidden agenda, like he knew that Kiku had a secret, which was that she is female and is a scabbard in hiding. Zoro also suspects ex-Drake so much that he attacks him despite Luffy's acceptance. Yes, even though his captain told him to accept Drake. Finally, you might forget, but he actually intentionally falls into the water in front of Nami in Arlong Park because he knew that Nami wasn't ready to kill anyone. Yup, Zoro would go that far to prove his suspicions. Now, let's talk about Zoro's major fights in One Piece. First, the universally liked Zoro vs Mr. One. Zoro damn near dies fighting Mr. One Das Bones. He acknowledges it himself that he needs to be able to cut steel if he is able to win the battle. and in the end, he is able to activate armament haki, something that even Luffy is unable to do until the time skip. How impressive is that? But I want you to focus on something else besides the feat being impressive. Focus on how adamant he was about figuring out a way to defeat Mr. One. He knew he had to be able to cut steel to win, and he focused all his energy and haki toward that. Now let's go to another of Zoro's fights, his fight versus Pika. This is the first fight Zoro struggles in after the time skip. The struggle isn't so much because Pika is so much stronger than Zoro, no, but because Pika's devil fruit makes it a tricky fight. Zoro keeps wondering what can be done to defeat Pika and get around the devil fruit. Actually, he comes up with 5 different plans. Plan 1, shoot some slashes, which I assume would be pound a hole, but it was, quote, too far to be effective. So, plan number 2, jump onto Pika's back, but again, it was too far away to be possible. Plan number 3, yell out so that Usopp and the others would notice and dodge Pika. Again, too far to be heard. So plan number 4, use a Denden Mushi, but then he didn't have one, so he went for plan number 5, which was fly toward Pika to cut him down. We know what happens next. Zoro tells Commodore Orlumbus to throw him, and then Zoro ends up cutting Pika down in grand fashion. But the main takeaway from here is that the focus Zoro showed in finding a logical way to bring down Pika instead of simply hitting him time and time again with a bigger and bigger fist. No, I'm not criticizing Luffy's fights, as he too has some strategic fights like versus Crocodile with the water hose. I'm just saying that Zoro focuses much more on logical ways to defeat his enemies more than other characters. Finally, let's move on to Zoro vs King. In what is probably Zoro's most difficult fight, Zoro wonders time and time again about what to do to defeat King. In this fight, the tricky part is King's flames. Zoro has questions about King's race and thinks that understanding his race will allow him to win the fight. In fact, Zoro goes so far as to say, quote, I don't think I can win. After he figured out the trick about Lunarian flames, Zoro is confident he can win, and he says so as well. But again, can you imagine that Zoro said something that he couldn't win besides that knowledge? The same Zoro that never backs down no matter what? Well, the thing is, Zoro is actually like that. Luffy is similar but not exactly the same. Luffy and Zoro are absolutely fearless and ready to accept death. However, Zoro is more logical and tries to find logical ways to get out of the situation. Yes, he accepts his failures and he acknowledges when he can't defeat somebody, like when he thinks he can't defeat Mr. One and King and even Pika without figuring out a strategy. Granted, Luffy also acknowledges that he couldn't defeat the Admirals and even Smoker before the time skip. But for Zoro, this logical side is significantly more showcased in One Piece. So, in a nutshell, Zoro is stubbornly logical. Logical to a fault sometimes, as he takes a long time to trust people even when his captain has ordered it. This logic is shown especially in his major fights, namely versus Mr. One, versus Pika, and versus King. And when Zoro realizes that no logical strategy can win him a fight, then he accepts it head on, and he never runs from it. The most famous example being versus Mihawk, of course. No matter how illogical it is, he never runs away from a fight. That is why it's so incredible that Zoro begs Mihawk his ambition to train him. He sacrifices his honor for loyalty toward his captain. Again, Zoro is logical, but when logic gives way, he holds on to his honor over rationale. And when even honor is threatened in the face of his loyalty, then he forsakes everything and shows his loyalty to Luffy. That, ladies and gentlemen, is Roronoa Zoro. Thank you everyone for watching the video. I wanted to make the video for over 2 months now. From now on I'll try to be more active. I stream live whenever the scans come out. Like, comment and subscribe, and look at the description for some of my theory videos. Goodbye.